I'm Doug Jones, and you have discovered Beyond Trek Podcast.
On a red alert.
Well, that's why I'm using the same background. I'm sure we'll see that shot again. And you guys have to excuse me. I like ran out of the van. I must have hit every red light trying to get here, because as soon as I told you guys I was running late, the universe was just like, all right, well, screw Big J. Here's every red light. Yes. Well, and after I ate too much for Thanksgiving, I was in a coma for like a day. I do it every year. I say, I'm never eating again. And then it happens.
You just gotta say pie for breakfast. That's what I do.
Oh, I love pie for breakfast.
Pie for breakfast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some pecan pie with some ice cream.
Okay, I can do that. Oh, dag. The Vulcan ears. I love it. Well, very fitting for this episode.
It is a very special episode of Star Trek Discovery, Unification Part 3. And if you're familiar with Star Trek, you'll know that there were two previous unifications in Star Trek The Next Generation that aired in November of 1991 about Spock defecting from the Federation to unite the Romulan and Vulcan people. Now, whether or not he officially left the Federation is sort of tenuous. This episode makes a claim that has never been supported before, but let's tell him who we are.
Oh, and I got to silence my phone. I'm Big J, the rude one that forgot to put his phone on silent.
I'm Renzo.
And I'm Dag. And today we want to wish a very special birthday to Scarlett Palmers, aka Naomi Wildman from Star Trek Voyager. Happy birthday.
Oh, it's her birthday? Oh, wow.
It is her birthday.
How old is she now?
32.
30. Oh, geez, Louise.
Doesn't that make you feel old?
It does. Yeah. If not for the gray in my goatee, I feel older even now. So yeah.
You know what I do when I get gray in my hair, Jay? Just shave it off.
I could do something a little less extreme, like diet or something, or just pluck the grays.
Diet. That's two big words there. All right. So spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. This episode kicks off with Michael wandering the ship. She's sort of gripped in ennui, lamenting the consequences of her demotion from the last episode. She's feeling very distant from her crew and her former friends, and she even admits that she feels like Discovery is not her home anymore. And she wonders what that really means, if it's true. Why am I here? She goes to the shuttle bay, finds Book. They get romantic, which is very finally nice to see between them, because it's like a semi-slow burn. Book,
you just have to assume the slow burn happened over a whole year.
A year, right?
Yeah.
Afterwards, Book admits that like living in the shuttle bay of the Federation isn't exactly a great long-term plan. Michael thinks about Spock. Book suggests that both Michael and Spock had a messiah complex, which Michael turns that around on Book.
I can buy that.
Him saving the transworm.
Certainly fits for Spock, and it also fits for Sybok. Absolutely. Maybe it's Sarek's doing.
Right. Yeah. That's Sarek and his three children having this whole messiah complex, and that's funny. Book complaining about being that shuttle. He's getting free room and board. It's like, and probably meals.
Wait, doesn't everybody in Star Trek get free room and board and meals?
Well, yes,
in
but
previous Star Trek, not in 930 years in the future Star Trek.
Right, okay. Where we're kind of in Wild West territory again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like Michael is, I could see her leaving Discovery at some point.
Yeah, I think I get that feeling too.
If she's getting freed up to do Section 31, that would be very interesting.
Burnham or Starfleet
Burnham, Giorgio, and Book.
Like, because the whole thing in the last episode was like, hey, I have this great idea where we can find out what happened to like literally everything we love and cherish. Saru was like, no, you're not going to do that. And she's like, I am going to do that. And so she goes and does that. And so she gets in huge trouble for it. And now this entire episode, episode 7, is spent like furthering her original, like the whole Discovery crew is backing this theory of hers that the burn wasn't started on Vulcan, or it had like a specific other unknown location of origin. And so it's weird that like it was so like, you shouldn't be doing this, blah blah blah, like last episode, and now the whole crew is just focused on this.
Yeah, well, it's probably one of those situations where the data that she obtained managed to prove her point enough that Saru and apparently Admiral Vance are like, you know what, we're doing this. This is legit. So it's just a matter of degrees, right? If you assert that something's true but provide no proof, people can dismiss it without much work, right? But once you've provided a good amount of evidence for it, then it becomes, harder to just dismiss it offhand. So I think that's essentially what happens with the call and Ket too.
Well, and the other thing is that there's a degree of necessity here, because the only person who could get this crucial piece of data, the data on SB19, is Michael Burnham, which is basically walking ass backwards into luck that they have this person there who is a relative to Spock, and she's an asset now you have to utilize. Okay, she got her reprimand about the thing. She got demoted. Now, did she get demoted like from commander to lieutenant commander, or did she just lose her position? Okay. Yeah. So basically, yes, she got her reprimand. She lost the first officer position. Let's move on. You have some critical data we need to get. We can't get it from the Vulcans without you. Just go do the thing. And I agree with that. They kirked her.
They kirked her. They took away her pencil pushing needs and gave her the freedom to do what she needs to do.
It's like
just like they did in Star Trek 4.
Yep.
Yes, and it's not that she has a messiah complex. It's that the show treats her like a messiah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking if she could be a little meta for a moment. She's like, "Excuse me, main character." Shh.
Yeah, like it got extremely meta, like the writing did there.
Go ahead.
The scene at the beginning with Vance, right, where they're just like talking about like, well, Navarre, and that's Vulcan for you people, kind of thing, like for you in your time known by its former name, right? Like that was delightful stuff for me. And then the Romulans, I thought they were the enemies in our time. They didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
They're the same. All that was great to me, right? What I did find really funny though was the moment where Vance does his like dramatic heel turn, like, but Michael Burnham's Spock's sister kind of thing. Like it's that moment in Knives Out where it snaps and people like turn around. And that's where it happens. A little overacted, but I still enjoyed the hell.
Yeah,
it was pretty dramatic.
I still think Vance has some kind of agenda in play here to be about facing so many times with Discovery. I mean, it's a great opportunity for him and maybe a little bit of hope, and maybe he's buying into it. But that scene with Tilly that followed up, where Michael goes to see Tilly, and they have a little heart moment where Tilly's like, you put me in a bad spot, and Michael's like, yeah, I know, I didn't want to do this to you. And Tilly asserted her boundaries, like, no, it's my choice, you tell me and I get to decide what it does to me. And I thought that was really cool, because like I'm on a boundaries kick right now. But Michael's still unapologetic.
Is it really a boundary to say I deserve this information?
Don't decide what's good for me. Be honest with me as your friend, I think is more like what she was trying to get across.
Right.
The same thing Vance said to Saru in the last episode. Don't make decisions for me. Give me the information. Let me decide.
I think
Tilly's kind of saying the same thing.
I think it's, in the context of Tilly and Michael, that was a very friendship moment. It was like, I know you're the XO and you're supposed to like do these things, but you got your butt kicked down from XO for doing it. So like the next time you think about doing that, don't put me in that spot.
Right. And they're friends and roommates. So,
right. I love what she says at the end of the episode. It's so great. Right. So Michael remains unapologetic about her actions. Like she is so convicted that knowing the source of the burn will help save the Federation, which I don't disagree with immediately. The computer chimes, it signals the completion of the analysis on the third black box. We find out that all three black boxes do have different timestamps in the millionths of seconds. I think it was 1 millionth and 7 millionths of a second across several thousand light years. But Tilly reminds us it's significant, but it's only a 2D, cross section of the burn. We need more data points. And suddenly Michael just is like, well, what about this project SB19? There's like 1,000 data points here. It's like, why did we spend the last episode doing what we did if we knew about SB19 and we didn't pursue that instead?
Well, maybe it didn't come up until they were doing what they were doing. And then this info is presented, which that was a little strange to me. If this information was so guarded so it was so guarded in secret that it was only known that there was some project or some file called SB19, but then it was highly classified. And that may not have been information that they came across until they were doing the thing they were doing.
Well, think about it the same way we thought about Genesis, right? We ended up with a report, a basic briefing that was recorded by the original scientists and then re-recorded by the admiral who authorized it, but no data on the actual scientific project, how it was done, how it worked, that it used protomatter, nothing with that was on there. And yet the only people who knew it were the scientists that worked it. So something similar for SB19, even if SB19 is a lot bigger, right? They know what it is, they know the basics of what it's trying to do. Vance showed that little animation, but they don't know the details and they don't have control over it. So they got to go to the original scientists who left it in the Vulcan hands. Something to point out in this scene before we move on, there was a really cool honorific for Anton Yelchin, the actor for Chekhov who died. One of the ships that they had the black box for was the USS Yelchin.
Yes.
So it's good that they did that. The other ship was the USS Giacconi, which is named after a real-world astrophysicist who worked on lensing of quantum lensing. And then the last one was the Gavnor, which we don't know if it was a Federation ship or not, but that one's name we just don't know.
The Gavnor could have been a reference to Tellarite Ambassador Gav from TOS Journey to Babel, or there was a Klingon ship that had Gav in the title of it as well.
Okay.
What I really like in the next scene is, because Tilly's like, hey, the Admiral might know about SB19, so go talk to him. Saru and Michael go to Vance, who says, SB19 was a project from Navarre. You would have noted in your time as Vulcan. And I want to do like a shout out on Navarre because it's really cool. Navarre was a Vulcan word that a linguist coined in 1967 for a fanfic magazine.
Get out of here. Really?
1967. It's been 53 years. And they've done a couple of in-universe Navarre references, most recently on Star Trek Enterprise. The Navarre was a Vulcan ship. So,
yes. Okay. When I heard the name Navarre, I thought, okay, hold on a minute. This sounds familiar. I've heard this somewhere.
And the word Navarre means to form. Like two things coming together.
So nice double entendre there.
Total great reference.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Perfect.
Michael and Vance sort of exchange like, whoa, the Romulans, and we learn about the whole Romulan history that we already know about because we're the audience and we saw it happen. And we learn that the Romulans and the Vulcans live together and they're not part of the Federation. That must have been the Romulans. Actually, it was the Vulcans because SB19, we learn, is a transportation project that was supposed to help ships travel thousands of light years in an instant. They came to the Federation with some concerns. The Federation overrode those concerns and said, no, do it anyway. And so Michael's like, they think they caused the burn. And Vance is like, no, they think the Federation ordered them to cause the burn. So this whole planet has been living with this guilt of why didn't we speak up earlier? In addition to all of their other fractured policies and agendas that we will learn about throughout this episode.
Brilliant premise in my part.
Now, the way I took it was they were doing this research. They discovered that there were, like you said, there were concerns, but the Federation ordered them to continue their research, continue moving forward because it was the only promising alternative. And then they believed that the burn was accidental and they thought they caused it. But this information that they have apparently is supposed to be so politically,
Sensitive.
just sensitive that I would think, okay, well, if you think that you caused it, but you didn't, then what's the balance there? Proving your innocence, or is the information more damning than you just taking the fall for it?
And you're absolutely summarizing the debate the quorum has during the I don't remember the name of the ritual, but during that. Thank you. Which we learned is some new Vulcan Science Institute tradition that cannot be denied. But yeah, Jay, you summarized the positions of the three members of that quorum fairly well. That Romulan spells it out. He's like, hey, if we're not responsible for this, we should know about it. And the Vulcan's like, hey, we probably should figure this out better. And then the other Romulan is like, whoa, I'm going to play the middle.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was a little bit different than that. Generally, you got the Romulan's opinion perfect. I think the Vulcan was more like, this is settled stuff. We need to bury this. This is stuff that we should be repressing, like we repress our emotions. Let's leave behind and move forward, right? And then the middle lady, the Romulan Vulcan middle, Shira, yes. She was saying that we need to understand the current situation better before we decide either way. She was just playing the middle, the fence. So
now it was, you said the Vulcans were the ones that made it was the Vulcan side that made the decision to leave the Federation. Now, were the Romulans, I may have heard it wrong or missed it, but did the Romulans kind of get grandfathered in to the Federation because they all moved to Vulcan? And wasn't it said that the Romulans wanted to stay in the Federation?
Yes.
I would imagine that they do, because like in this universe, the Romulans had their planet destroyed. And so they were scattered to the wind for a while. And so the idea of reunification probably sounded pretty nice to them.
When you don't have a home and you're staying outside a house with your bags packed, like, so you remember when you were talking about moving in together?
The closest analogy we could think of right now would be, let's say the United States became a nuclear wasteland and every American moved from America with 330 million people back to Great Britain. Right? Like, there are more Americans than there are Brits, just like there are more Romulans than there are Vulcans, right? But now you're having to deal with being on the turf, the planet of the originating people. And the Vulcans were very gracious, I think, letting them come. The unification happened, but it probably happened under a Vulcan banner, not a mixed banner at that point. And then afterwards, they settled on coming up with Navarre and all these accommodations and having like territory that is for Romulans on Vulcan. But here's the real question for me. What happened to the Remans?
Why do we
planet worth of them too?
Why do I need to know? I don't need to know.
Well, but because
there is much descendants of Surak as the Romulans.
I'm joking. I'm just saying the writing should have told us.
Right. Here's my gripe with that, Renzo, is between Picard and this episode especially. If we look at Picard, and especially this season of Discovery as a whole, there are so many good and deep references that are being made to things, even in lower decks. So you can't tell me that they're digging out some of these deeply buried references, or ones that are obscure, some that are known, but that they're completely avoiding one that's very obvious. Like that's not a hidden thing. Remans were the big part of Star Trek Nemesis. They made an appearance in episode of Enterprise. It was a 3-parter that had to deal with that remote controlled VR Romulan ship. So I don't know. I don't know the reason why Reman seem to be getting ignored, because you're right. There was planet full of them too, and
the Orions helped the Remans escape, and the Remans caused the burn out of jealousy because the Romulans and the Vulcans got back together and they ditched their Reman bros.
Oh, that's dirty.
We're gonna learn about that in the next episode.
The reason I asked about the Romulans wanting to stay is because Nacho and I were talking about that, and I said, no, it was the Romulans that wanted to stay in the Federation. He asked me, well, why would they even want to be in the Federation or stay? Because they didn't help them when their planet was going to be destroyed. And I told him, okay, well, here's the thing. It's been over 900 years. And also they found out that it was actually one of their own people that was in the Quat Malat. We're talking about Commodore O, that caused that whole thing and caused them to lose the whole rescue fleet. Now, granted, they might have had a beef with Starfleet not trying again, but that's kind of splitting hairs. Like, okay, yes, you tried, you had your rescue fleet wiped out, but then you didn't try again. I would have to say that, considering the fact that it was one of their own people, once they found out it was one of their own people, I'm not sure they're going to hold on to that grudge of the Federation being the cause, at least not enough to keep them from never wanting to, one, be in the Federation, two, not want to leave it if they are in it. So that was my thought on that.
Let's just wonder here a little bit, right? Now we've got a Picard that he's not really immortal, but he's got essentially a new lease on life after his experiences the first season of Picard.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he mind melded with Spock and he mind melded with Sarek, right? Sarek rather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the second time I flipped them. And Sarek. And they are both people whom he valued, like his friendship, right? Like those are memories that he cherished, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And he knows that the Romulan people are struggling and he cares about them deeply. He could dedicate the entire rest of his life to helping the Romulans move out or move on from the loss of their homeworld. And maybe he's part of what triggers their moving into back to Vulcan, right? It took centuries. And I can totally see him being part of the catalyst. He could take up part of the mantle of Spock's work after Spock passes or goes to the Kelvinverse. So.
Right. Missing, presumed dead kind of thing. And you're right. Picard very well may have picked up that mantle that was laid down by Spock after his disappearance, which again, I was kind of curious as to why the writers chose to have Vance refer to Spock's disappearance actually as Spock's death. Because
by his point, it's been 1,000 years. So.
Right. Yeah, it's been 1,000 years. I'm sure that
Spock is like a Jesus figure at this point. Like it's been so long.
He sacrificed himself to save the Romulans. That's what everybody thinks. It didn't work because the Nova still hit Romulus, but he that was the plan, was to save Romulus, and he died trying, according to the timeline.
And probably as far as they're concerned, that he probably did not survive whatever happened. So whether it was missing or declared dead, okay, yeah. So I guess if you're missing after X amount of time, you're just you're assumed and declared. So I get it. And it was not necessary to open that whole can of worms of referring to Star Trek 2009. They could have. They were certainly well within their right to, because I don't know. Oh well, whatever. It was just a line.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like in passing. That story is in the shadow. You don't really get to see anything, but it's kind of like you're hyper focused on the now, but we all know what was supposed to have happened.
So that's where the opening credits roll, and we go right back into that moment where Michael's like, Vulcan would never leave the Federation. It must have been the Romulans. And Vance is like, no, actually the Romulans wanted to stay. It was the Vulcans that pulled out. And that's, Burnham whiplash moment number one.
Say what?
Well, I'm going to fix that.
This is where we get some more detail. I'm going to go back in time. It's going to happen on my watch.
She's just like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix all of this. I'm going to make it better. I'm like, Michael, chill.
Sometimes you just need to listen and stop fixing.
Let it be.
Be like your other brother, Cybok. Share your pain and gain strength from the sharing.
No. We don't need more cults in this world. We've probably got plenty out there. Doomsday cults as a result of the burn have to exist everywhere.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about that now.
Sign me up.
Oh, man. Vance tells Saru and Michael about what SB-19 was as a transportation project. The Vulcans were worried that it could be weaponized. They were going to stop all research on it. The Federation said, no, you have to do this anyway. And that's why the Vulcans think that that's why Michael says the Vulcans think they caused the burn, but Vance corrects her and says, no, the Vulcans think that the Federation forced them to cause the burn.
Think about that kind of cultural guilt. Like that puts Catholic guilt to nothingness at that point, right? That's an incredible amount of guilt.
hey, you guys, we're going to force you to do this thing. And you did the thing, and then you destroyed the Federation.
Right.
Cool.
It's
No
like,
wonder
that's like
they didn't
not even
want
like
to be a part of it anymore.
right. It may not even be like we don't want to be a part of it. It's we're not worthy of being a part of it. We broke the Federation.
No. It was.
I don't think it's I think it's more of like a righteous anger, like indignation, right?
Yeah.
Like we knew this was happening. We knew that this was a risk. You forced us to do it. You're not good enough for us. I don't think it's a self-loathing kind of thing. I think it's more of like an indignation. I said it before.
I took the self-loathing thing from a line the Romulan Quorum guy says, where he's like, if we'd have learned about this sooner, it would have saved a lot of people a lot of suffering. And I took that sort of sure, there might be one guy there who's like, I caused the burn, because Vulcans live for a really long time. There's probably a lot of scientists from the SB-19 who are still alive.
Yeah, it's only been 100 years.
Got kind of going angry on that one.
The president of Navarre said that was the final straw, and so it sounds like there were issues before that, which we don't necessarily know, but apparently there was a dilithium scarcity that was plaguing the Federation. Right. Well, and the thing that I'm curious about, because Dag, I think I've heard you say this a couple times, was that there's a belief that the Federation ordered Vulcan or ordered Navarre to cause the burn. I thought it was an accident. It was an accident that the Vulcans thought it was
totally an accident. Like no one really knows at this point what the burn was, it was caused.
The Federation certainly didn't tell them to cause the burn.
Tell them to cause the burn. Told them to play with SB-19, and they think SB-19 caused the burn.
Right.
So the Federation ordered them to continue SB-19. So Vance says it very clearly. He says they think we ordered them to cause the burn. We didn't. And but when the Vulcans pulled out, they basically said, "You guys ordered us to do this, and look what happened. F off."
Right. Yeah, I can see that they split the hair on that and went with you ordered us to do something that caused the burn. So basically, you ordered us to cause the burn. Yeah. So Michael's like, let's get the SB-19 data. And no, you can't, because they're not part of the Federation anymore. But wait, you're Spock's sister. We can just send an email to them and be like, hey, Michael Burnham's coming home. Yeah.
Michael Burnham is coming.
Right. Yeah. It's like, all right. So
no,
this is like Jesus' sister showing up out of nowhere and be like, wait, you weren't in the Bible.
Unclassified. My entire existence is classified.
Yeah. No,
everything I've ever done is classified.
Yeah. I mean, if Jesus' sister just showed up out of nowhere, she'd probably get listened to.
So Michael tells Vance, I just got demoted. I'm not the person to represent the Federation on this. And Vance is like, find a way, and walks away. Michael gets another soliloquy scene in which she remembers speaking to Spock in the shuttle before at the end of season 2. And tells him, there's a whole universe of people that are going to reach out to you. Let them. We flash back to him beaming off that shuttle, and then to a moment in their childhood where they share a high five. Mm-hmm. I was a little worried about that, because I'm like, before this, like Vulcans touching hands, that was like intimate, and okay, maybe there's different levels of intimacy.
If you do the 2 fingers. Do the 2 fingers.
Brother, sister.
Just a 2-finger touch. Got it.
Yes, that 2-finger touch that we first saw with Sarek and Amanda in Journey to Babel.
And then Star Trek 3 with Savick and Spock. Okay.
Yes, before they got it on.
Burnham ends up back in her quarters. She brings up a hollow of Spock. It's a scene from Unification that talks about Spock's dedication to the cause. It's taken from Admiral Jean-Luc's private collection, Jean-Luc Picard's. One thing I noted here, and we talked about this in a couple of episodes, like 2 episodes ago, we had a tricorder with Delta branding. 1 episode, we had pajamas with Delta branding. This episode, we have holographic play buttons. And if there was a perfect opportunity for Delta branding, you could have had a Delta to the left and a Delta to the right, and a Delta for fast forwarding and a Delta for rewinding. Just, you put the Deltas. Come on, for branding Deltas, they need to be everywhere.
Missed their chance there.
Different software designer made the interface.
Fire that guy. We need more Deltas.
Well, if she would have played more of the video, we would have saw an advertisement for Starfleet, like YouTube ads.
Oh, yeah.
Join Starfleet. We caused the burn.
See, not the galaxy, but nearby you instead.
And if you see a weird distortion in space that's kind of like starry, it's just a starry distortion. It's definitely not one of our secret bases.
Yeah.
Join Starfleet. No, but seriously, it's actually really funny. 1,000 years later, the play buttons are still the same on a starship.
Hey, I mean, it works. It's what it is. There's no reason to why reinvent the wheel.
Book comes into the Burnham's quarters. Burnham just talks about how cool Spock was. Book tells her that she and her brother, and by extension Starfleet, are chronic overachievers.
Mm-hmm.
Burnham asks how she can do this mission. Book says it's possible that a person with a problematic relationship with the future might be the best person for the job.
He's right. He's right.
Wah, 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 woo, woo. That's what that says to me.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one, Watney.
Watney, who is criminally not impressed with romance at all.
I could say.
Look, I actually like them together, but I think that there's nothing of value to the plot going on with the romance, and that's my biggest gripe. Like,
romance doesn't help the plot.
Romance should be like a part of the story, not like something that you tack on.
Well, but okay, I get what you're saying. However, the romance can't be what carries this season.
I didn't say that.
The A plot. I know. I didn't say you said that. I didn't say you said that. I'm just saying that it can't, but it necessarily doesn't feel tacked on per se.
It feels tacked on to me. That's just how I feel. It's not like I don't look forward to scenes with them because it's like it just feels very. I don't know how to say it. It doesn't feel.
Here's what's tacked on.
Genuine? I don't know. It's like, oh, well, we left Ash in the last season, so now we have to have another romance for Michael, and here's this guy.
She has needs. Well, but they spent a year together. So when you say tacked on, I think about Chakotay and 7 of 9. That came out of freaking nowhere. That's tacked on. This at least had some background to it. There was some past history. I guess
the best thing, I'm not suggesting that romance be like the A plot of Star Trek at all. Right. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that like with B'Elanna and Tom, it really contributed a lot to their own character growth. And yes. I don't necessarily feel like that happens with Michael.
Right. With
B'Elanna and Tom, we got that their intimate development in real time. With Book and Michael, it's been a year, and we didn't get to see that.
Right, it's been a year, and you're telling me they didn't hook up at all.
Oh, I totally think they hooked up.
No, they make it sound like they didn't.
No, but like that's what I'm saying is they make it seem like, oh no, they're on camera. Let's go ahead and rush this through. Like it doesn't seem it's not fulfilling from a romantic perspective.
Well, but Star Trek really isn't known for the romance.
Name a Star Trek show that has not had romance.
Well, no, I meant they all have romance. It's one of those things that when you talk about tacked on, we're talking Worf and Troy series finale tacked on. Like, okay, this is the end. There's nothing left to lose. Let's suddenly have them hook up together.
Right. Michael has not had someone in her life that the writers have decided to write her romantically interested in. Like the first 2 seasons, there was Ash, and then she totally just said, fuck you, I'm gonna go to the future. and then like, but with like Deanna and Riker, like that, we got to see a long-term thing play out. And that was really great because you get to see like, they also have a friendship and everything. And I just really don't feel like it's done well. Like, sure, like I get it, but it's not like the best.
To be fair, the original series had single episode moments where a main member of the crew meets somebody, falls in love, decides they're going to leave the ship. Bad things happen. They realize they're wrong. They stay on the ship. Scotty has that. Chekhov has that.
Dax has that.
Well, Dax wasn't in the original series, but you're right.
Well, no, yeah, and I mean that happens in TNG too. Like,
Right,
Yeah,
and
all
DS9.
the time.
Riker had it happen multiple times in TNG.
Oh yes.
Look, he makes it happen. I don't know what to tell
Riker
you.
was lucky to get off that one planet because that doctor was like, I've always wanted to have sex with an alien. He was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You just fetishized my main man that I fetishized.
Right. I'm sorry to like kind of derail what we're talking about, but like
You sure did.
I you know, like if romance is going to happen, I guess it's after I brought this up because I'm the girl in this co-host circle, but like, you know, if we're going to do it, make it good, and it's just not good to me. It's not good.
I think part of the problem though is that whereas they had the story between Paris and B'Elanna go on over the course of years, both of them were main characters. So you saw them every episode. So they could have like a scene in the hallway where they just kind of go, hey, move on, right? We have Ayala in book on this show as a guest. So he can't be in every episode. He's not around every episode. He's off doing things with Grudge. So we don't get those little tiny scenes between two characters all the time.
Yep.
So there's just,
and I think when you have the Messiah main character and that is who she's like going to be paired with, it's going to create this off balance feeling, and it doesn't feel like something that's interesting.
Well, and plus you don't have 24 episode seasons where you have the allowance to have episodes to dedicate to that, or those bottle episodes, or like Renzo said, you could have little hallway things or whatever. It's all compact, it's tight, not a moment can be frivolous. And so you can't spend a lot of time on the romance. You don't have the time in the story
but like
Mm-hmm.
to do it.
Stamets and Culber, for example, are an example of this being very well done to me.
over three seasons, though.
Over three seasons.
But that's what I'm saying is like, sure, that Michael has spent a lot of time with Book in the past, but now we get kind of like this weird tail end. Hopefully not tail end, because that would be bad for her. But like, you know, like it just feels weird how they've done it.
Let's give it another season or so. I mean, we don't know that Book is going to be one season and out. Very well could be, but I would say let's give him a chance. You know,
he's a prime candidate for death. Early.
As we know,
Early
Discovery says any of the side characters that get focus episodes die.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, everyone is kind of like on edge right now.
as long as he doesn't put on a red shirt.
We gotta keep going. We gotta keep going. But like, because we have to get to the part where Tilly.
We haven't even gotten to the trial yet.
Oh my God.
We haven't even gotten to Navarre yet.
All right, let's get it forward.
All right.
You guys brought it up, or did I bring it up? I don't know.
Oh my God, you rewind.
I'm not here for this conversation. We're not going to blame anybody. I love the discussion. I love it. Don't let anybody tell you less. And if you're watching or listening to us and you're like, roll my eyes, subscribe to us, give us some money because we're paying you for entertainment or something. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, season.
Doug, we got this.
Scene 7. Tilly is in Saru's office. Saru tells her he wants her to be his acting.
What the fuck?
First of all, her mind explodes.
So did mine.
She expressed a bunch of doubts that she didn't complete command training. He reassures her that her experience traveling the future more than makes up for missing command training. He says he can trust Tilly. This kind of harkens back to Far From Home, where he and Tilly go on their away mission. They encounter Zara, and Philippa Giorgio saves the day. She asks if he's making this offer because she's qualified or compliant, and he says it's because it's the best option for the ship.
Way to dodge the question.
I mean, she punched him right in the solar plexus with that.
It's the right question, though.
That was the right question.
And he didn't answer it. She deserves an answer.
She does.
I think he was probably so thrown off guard about that. And you can't tell me that in the back of his mind, compared to Michael, that's exactly what he was thinking. And
honestly, if Vance lets it go through, there's a problem. What Vance should be doing here is, you can't put an ensign there. Here, let me give you a qualified 32nd century commander to act as your first officer.
Literally a perfect way to bridge the gap between the Discovery crew's culture shock and the new Federation. That's like the perfect solution.
But here's the thing. There is nothing saying that to be first officer, you have to have the rank of commander.
Correct.
When Spock was first officer to Kirk, Spock was lieutenant commander. He was lieutenant commander, so he wasn't a full commander.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm not worried about the rank.
Well,
here's about the character and the experience. The rank is less important to me. Right.
But the thing is, and this was said later, is that she is the kind of person that the crew will follow her. I think that's the defining quality of a first officer, is someone that the crew trusts. The first officer is that bridge between the captain and the crew. So you have to have somebody that is like crew minded. I was about to say likable. Maybe they don't have to be, but Riker was a great first officer because he was at that level to where it's like the crew could relate to him. He was like, you know how it is. It's like your VP is probably not as relatable or approachable, but your manager is, your middle manager is. And that's how I see the relationship between the captain, the first officer, and the crew. So the first officer doesn't necessarily have to be a commander. We are just in a situation where the person that seems like the best one on the ship that people would naturally go with and trust and work with is Tilly. Now you're right.
It's
Vance
Michael.
She goes rogue.
They followed Michael into a wormhole 930 years into the future, and she operated as a well-oiled machine. It makes me question Saru.
Me too,
honestly.
I think Saru is showing his inexperience here.
He absolutely is. And it's making me really, really doubt his captainship, because he's appointing a yes man for his XO, someone who's going to just do what he says. I mean, I don't think Tilly will do that, but I think he thinks Tilly will do that because of how she basically told him Michael was wrong.
Next episode, we're going to get a situation where Saru can't be captain and Tilly has to take command, and she's going to be challenged and she's going to be doubting, and then she's going to find the inner strength and pull through it. Well, I think that's next episode.
But here's the thing. Saru went with the standard, the first officer is going to be the commander, the person who's the next rank below me, and that's Michael. And she was first officer for 6 hours and goes rogue and gets herself in a lot of trouble.
She might not have had to go rogue if Saru had told Vance.
Okay, right. But the shit has to roll downhill. And because of that experience, I don't fault Saru for making first officers someone that would be more likely to listen and to follow orders and to have a rational head on top of their shoulders.
See, that's the thing though, right? We see Saru as already being like a very much a lawful good character. He thinks within the rules. He doesn't think about bridging or the edges of those rules. He stays well within his line, right? Mm-hmm. What he needs is an EXO that thinks differently. He doesn't need an EXO that thinks the same as him. And Tilly has shown very little drive to think outside or beyond the rules. She's very much the middle lane.
But again, he just got burned by having someone that...
But she was
Nielsen. Right. So pick Nielsen, who
She's
is
not a main character. You can't.
Lieutenant on the bridge. Nielsen is like the Spore Drive officer. She she is third in command, as we see when both Burnham and Saru are off the bridge. She takes the hail as the third officer, third in command for when Grudge hails the bridge.
Yeah.
And so I think she's kind of like the perfect choice for this, but instead the writers went in a completely different direction and chose again not to develop someone on the bridge that and we're not the only audience asking for more development of the bridge crew. This is a great opportunity to develop like Nielsen more or anybody else on the bridge, but they chose Tilly again, who's like one of the most bright and well-rounded characters on the show.
Right.
I don't get it from a perspective of in character from Saru, and I don't get it from a writing perspective either.
From the writing, I actually get it more from the writing perspective than I do for the character perspective. And the reason I say that is because I think I know I don't know if any of you have, but I have come to terms with the acceptance that was it Nielsen or Nelson? Nelson. I've come to terms with Nelson, Bryce, Reese, and to another degree, Detmer, Wissakan, Reno, Colbert. Well, maybe not Colbert, but like those 5 or 6 are just going to be consistent bridge characters. It's better than having a random extra on the bridge each time like they did in TNG. I'm glad that there's consistency. We see them often. Linus, I forgot Linus. We see these characters often, but their purpose is not to be on the spotlight or to have a lot of story or development about them. They are just there as that consistency. So I get it. I understand it. It's too late. I think it's too late in the game to suddenly take one of the B characters and suddenly make them first officer, because now you have to put some story time into this character that's new story time. Well, new scenes that you don't have time for, because you've already got Tilly. You're already going to be using that actor, that actress, and that character. If you go with what would have made logical sense with Nelson, then you either pretty much don't even show the first officer. You're still with Tilly and Stamets and Michael, or B, you start expending time on this character just because you feel the obligation that you need to, because now she's the first officer. I really think that the only choice from a writing perspective was who out of the A group, which is Michael, Stamets, Tilly, and Colbert, is going to be the first officer.
Yeah,
out of the A team, who's going to be, well, and they already did.
Don't disagree
Michael.
with you. I think that this is all fallout from the choice of having a main character-centric show. Had they stuck with an ensemble like every other Star Trek had in the past, it would have been much easier to swap somebody in. That being said, I think Wani's completely right. I don't think this makes sense from a writing perspective. Like in universe, it doesn't make much sense. Even with the touching scene that we get at the end of the episode where it's like, say yes, cool. All of your friends are telling you to say yes and they think you can handle it. Cool, that's supportive. We love that in Lower Decks. We'll love it here. It's a very touching scene, right? But from Saru's perspective, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's short-sighted. It gets him a yes man, like Watney said, and that's the dangerous bit. A captain needs to be challenged by their XO, right? And I don't think that Tilly's shown any inclination to challenge people ever.
Yeah, I agree. And Saru should have built up, even if we don't get to see it. There should be a trust already in the bridge crew with him. He should be able to trust other crew on the bridge. And like, I mean, Tilly's on the bridge, but she's like an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm. Scientist more.
Yeah, a science officer, whatever. Right. So they're kind of the same thing when magic becomes tech, like at a certain point. So not to belay like the dissatisfaction I have too much, or not to be too on it, but like I do really disliked this. It made me very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I am not okay with the writing direction. So
yeah, and our on-air producer for this episode is about to pull the hook onto the stage and yank us off this topic. So we gotta run. Gotta move on to the next thing.
What have we got next?
Why do you guys have to have real life plans on Saturdays? Jeez, you're supposed to be just losers. I have
2 Thanksgivings.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Thanksgiving was Thursday. Get it done.
2 families.
Okay. All right.
What's next, Stag?
So Saru gives Tilly a day to think about it. Then he exits the ready room, goes to the bridge, orders the jump to Navarre.
Yep.
Makes a happy speech about how Navarre hasn't seen a Federation ship in the century. So let's remind them who we are and let us like honor them or something.
Back them into a corner quickly.
One of the things that I noted here is when Discovery exits the starbase and they go to prepare for the spore drive jump, the nacelles reattach to.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, why are they touching?
And they go back out. And so it makes me wonder, was that just an aesthetic effect of the spore drive so that the nacelles went with it? Is programmable matter only supposed to, like, you can travel at warp with your nacelles detached, but the spore drive thing is weird, so we're going to reattach to make sure the whole ship comes with it? I would like to see more of traveling variations. Maybe at warp the nacelles have to reattach, and it's only when they're not at warp that you can be evasive and have the nacelles. Yeah,
that's how I thought of it. When you want more evasive maneuverability, you detach the nacelles and you can get that kind of. I'm like, why isn't the starbase where Vance is, like the Federation headquarters, like dissecting Discovery to figure out the spore drive and how it works? Because
they said they were going to.
All of their whole fleet would be like OP as shit if they could get that.
Well, first is understanding it, then understanding it's one thing, and then it's being able to reproduce it.
Right.
Is
so you're
another.
telling me Stamets is like,
well, 1,000 years smarter than everybody else?
No. There's two things here. One, we learned in season 2-ish that repeated travel through the mycelial network can be dangerous. And they tried to figure out how to do it cleanly, and Discovery did. 2, Stamets had to genetically alter himself with tardigrade DNA in order to be able to pilot the mycelial network. So unless something has happened with the whole eugenics, no augmented humans law, that would be also illegal. So Stamets is technically illegal on 2 big counts. He's an augment and he time travels.
I don't think
it's 1,000 years. Get over it.
Right.
And also, it had literally no effect on him. He's totally the same as he was. I
don't know the details. Right? I don't know the details of that law other than.
If not, they just make everyone tardigrades.
Yeah. Well, the thing I want to say real quick about the nacelles, I take that as they can attach them and detach them whenever they need to. It's like a vehicle. If you are on regular road, or if you hit the winter and you need to turn on your 4-wheel drive, it's kind of like that. It's just what the needs call for. Right. Is that okay? Do we need to have the nacelles attached for XYZ need, or can we have them, detached? It's.
I want to see Discovery get stuck going uphill. Put the chains on the nacelles.
Silly. Execute evasive order toboggan. One thing that's actually really cool here is, I just thought of this. The permanently detached nacelle thing could have been a natural outgrowth of what was multi-vector assault mode, where the ship would split into multiple pieces for an attack. Maybe they're like, hey, we could just apply this to like non-attack things and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was just thinking about that. Anyway,
the one thing I thought during that scene was, remember in Calypso, the short trek, the one that like showed us Discovery
1,000 years later.
Yeah. That Discovery didn't have detachable nacelles. That Discovery looked totally normal. It didn't look like it'd been upgraded at all.
Because things change as they're
programmable matter is programmable.
Oh, they programmed it back. Fair enough.
I don't know. Maybe the whole thing about Saru being a shit captain right now is going to explain why Discovery is abandoned in 1,000 years.
I just the mental gymnastics at this point for some of this writing is making me dizzy.
Guys, remember, this is episode 7 of a Star Trek series. Just like Picard, Nepenthe, this is your nostalgic feel-good episode before shit hits the fan and the writing really takes a dumpster.
This was my favorite episode of Discovery, period. Hey,
I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to shit on that, but like, it's not nostalgic at all. We didn't even get to go on Vulcan. Everything took place on Discovery.
Bottle episodes are tradition. Okay, so Discovery pops in at Lagrange 1 of Navarre, and Lagrange point is actually a real thing. It's a point between 2 gravitational bodies where you can just rest something and the gravity pull is the same. That's really funny because Vulcan or Navarre doesn't have any moons, so on the screen we see her pop up like right really close to the planet, but what other cosmic body is there to constitute a Lagrange?
The sun.
You have to be really, really far away
No, you don't. The Earth has Lagrange points that relate to our sun, and they're used for satellites.
Right, but they're not that close.
No, but I mean, maybe the mass of Vulcan is different.
And the Lagrange points that we use for our satellites are based on the moon, not the sun.
Not all. We still use some for solar observatories that are based on the sun one.
Right, but those are really far away. Those are like Venus orbits.
I like this. I like it when we get into
This is beautiful.
Yeah. Isn't the Navarre sun a red giant? Or it's a different. It's not the same kind of sun as
you're right.
Ours. It's something different. I can't remember what, but anyway, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's an incoming transmission. It's the president of Navarre. She shows up on the ship as a hologram. After confirming that Discovery was able to bypass their long range detection with their super duper transportation drive, she addresses Burnham specifically as Discovery's special guest. Tarina hopes Ambassador Spock would be proud of what they achieved. Burnham brings up SB-19. Tarina says no. Saru pushes the issue. Tarina kindly says they can drop it, or we'll gladly see your spore drive in use as you leave our system.
And kindly fuck off if you keep asking for it.
Hate to see you go, but we love to watch you leave.
It was the most Vulcan statement.
Yeah, it really was. It was that live long and prosper that Spock gave to the Vulcan Science Institute in 2009. Just
What are boundaries? Burnham doesn't know. She doesn't care.
It's that
no, we don't want to do this. You're going to because of this ancient ritual.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so Vulcan.
Colin Cat.
It's such a Vulcan thing to do,
It
though.
totally
right?
is.
Hey, the Stone of Gaul storyline had one of those crazy rituals out of nowhere too.
Yeah.
They come up with these every time.
And it's one of those rituals where, like, you make me have to do this, and you better be right, because this is the ritual where if you're not correct, then you are screwed. Like,
then everybody will know that Spock's sister was a liar.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in typical. It's like, I'm fine, I'll do this, but in order to get through it, I'm gonna have to express myself. It's like three ambassadors from this planet just going in on Michael.
You mean to say she's gonna have to share her pain and gain strength from the sharing? Anyway,
stop it with the Star Trek V references.
this episode's the therapy episode. Let me have this.
All right.
Okay, so she invokes the Dekallan Ket, which means she has to defend her evidence against a quorum from the Navarre Science Institute. Success means access to the SB-19 records. Note that the Navarre Tricom badge is Romulan wings with an IDIC symbol now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool. And the wings still have 2 planets in them, and the third one might be Vulcan. So maybe because Remus is still there, they did save the Remans.
No, it's not the planet. I mean, I think it's a what's the word I'm looking for? I'll say it if I think of it. We got to keep symbolic. That's what it was. Symbolic.
The quorum beam onto Discovery and are taken to the location where the Dekallan Ket is being prepared. The president sticks behind to warn Burnham of the outcome should she not fulfill the obligations of the ritual. She's told that she gets an arbiter, a member of the Qowat Malat, who will encourage them along the lines of the ritual. The president then leaves. The Qowat Malat representative arrives, and it's Gabby Burnham. They hug. Is this shoehorned?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Well, so that was one of the things that Burnham did when she first arrived. It was like any sign of mom, essentially, she tried to detect. Like, is there... I don't know. It's kind of shoehorned because
Renzo, this was
Vulcan, but
this was shoehorned so hard that my feet hurt after watching this episode. Like, it just
shoehorn is fitting something into an inadequate space, right? So
yeah.
I feel like this.
I felt like I had my mouth open with a crowbar on that. Like,
yeah.
Here you go.
So I do think it was shoehorned. It wasn't really given. I feel like it's like, here's mom. She's going to come here, like stir the pot, and then we'll never see her again. And that's not what that deserves. Yeah. It's not what that moment deserves.
I don't know. I feel like it fits pretty well because we know that the mother got sent into the future. She thought she was going to Terra Elysium, which was the first thing that Burnham did. It was like, am I on Terra Elysium? Right? Like trying to figure out if she's on the same planet as her mom. So we know that she was going to end up here. Now, whether they ran into each other or not, sure. There's some shoehorning there just to make it so that, in a big galaxy, they ran into each other. And she just so happens to be on Vulcan. However, we know that Gabby knows that Michael was raised by Vulcans, right? Like she's been following her history. It's kind of a logical place for her to end up if she thinks that Michael's going to end up there too.
Okay.
As for joining the co-op a lot, that's just cool Picard.
It's absolutely in line with her mom's character. I'll say that. Like her mom was Co-op Malat before Co-op Malat existed.
Right. Yep.
Basically.
Yep. I like it.
As we see in the previous timeline, when they trap her in the Red Angel suit, man, she's brutal. Like absolutely business only. Yeah. So I feel like it fits it really well, at least.
Yep. I got no grievance with her being in the Quamalat.
Nope. It was a cool reunion.
Shoehorned.
Why is that? Did you do a Google search for shoehorn and that's the image that came
up?
No,
that's like a living dinosaur. It's just called the
shoe hornbill.
It's a shoe bill.
A shoehorn is a piece of metal. It's a piece of metal you put in your shoe to put it on.
I know what that is.
Not a birdie.
But this is much more dramatic than a piece of metal.
I wonder why he's eating
fine, then I'll do it.
Because it's a dinosaur. I know we're like totally off topic now. Hold up. Okay, so Saru and Tarina discuss Discovery's arrival from the past. She's like, not everybody knows you guys are time travelers. Here's our shoehorn. Thanks, Watney. She asks him what he makes of the future. He admits he's troubled, but that he's committed to its core values. He tells her the Federation keenly felt the loss of Navarre and that he hopes diplomacy can resume. She tells him it would take more than one visit. There's a lot of issues. He asks to hear about them. Gabby and Michael talk about the trials and how convicted Burnham is about learning the source of the burn and how SB-19 would save the day. Gabby says Burnham's not going to convince them. And the reason she's there is because the Co-op Malat bind themselves to lost causes. To which I say, lost cause my ass. The last time we saw a Co-op Malat bind themselves to a lost cause, they crashed a Borg cube on a plot device.
It's like a lost cause. It's a lost cause in the same way that Picard was a lost cause. It's really not.
It's like the stakes are against you.
It's just like a funny quip to make someone like get.
We're gonna need a GIF where a Co-op Malat's like, we bind ourselves to lost causes. Straight up going to Jim Carrey, going, so you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah.
Very accurate.
Gabby explains that the three members of the quorum are very different. They have very different agendas, and they're going to take away what they pick and choose from any logical arguments. And that Gabby is there to push Burnham to the truth, not just the truth of her wants and needs, but the truth of herself, like very integral truth.
Absolute candor.
She says, yeah, exactly. She says the quorum isn't going to do a thing if Burnham isn't honest, especially with herself. Burnham kind of hand waves that as like, we're just going to appeal to the Vulcan purist. He has to abide by logic, and I know how to logic. Mom says, you're walking in there with a lot of expected. Yeah, she says you're walking in there with a lot of blind spots, which I'm like, that's great, but I also have plot armor.
Right, she's going to try to, try to appeal to the logical guy, which I think even walking in, that was probably, I don't like those odds.
BTW, I love Takir, and we'll get into it when the quorum presumes.
Okay.
Trina and Saru discuss the scarcity of dilithium. They talk about how the Federation is so big that the lithium was starting to become scarce even before the burn. That's why they were investigating this transportation alternative of SB-19.
Yeah.
She says, in the Federation's desire to serve the many, they forgot about the needs of the few. Saru reminds her that's a Vulcan axiom. She says we've moved past maxims and proverbs in order to reunify with the Romulans. She said they learned when to not bring those up. I think that's actually really cool because even in rhetoric today, people can get hung up on maxims and proverbs and not really think about the issues at hand. And we sort of meme our own maxims and proverbs to mean things that may have been relevant at one point, but not now.
Yes.
So I think that's a really cool saying.
What is that called when someone uses like a pun or like, well, that's the way things are?
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I call it a dismissal. But that's just me. Like that's just dismissing
Thought
the
terminating cliche or something.
Yeah.
TTCs. Don't give me that TTC.
Thought terminating cliche.
I think that's actually really cool.
Great.
A platitude. Fuck me. It's called a platitude. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Vulcans like platitudes. Anyway.
Yeah. But But I mean, I just like to apply what Trina says there is, we had our platitudes and they weren't really working for us.
Yeah. No, they ultimately don't.
We had to stop and really analyze, do the needs of the many always outweigh the needs of the few? These Vulcan hyperbolistic platitudes that are like, this is always a thing and these will always be in their place. And they had to realize, no, wait, they don't always need to be that way.
What they had to learn was that nuance is king, right? Like nuance is important. And so,
and that is absolutely critical to modern rhetoric today, where social media and people's feelings have caused us to polarize in ways that we have never really been before.
Right.
So what do you think the allegory that they're trying to make is with the burn and with the dilithium scarcity beforehand? Do you think that they're trying to make it some equivalent to like running out of oil? Like
I could see that
again, like
because
running out of oil and then you come up with crazy nuclear ideas and then you alleviate yourself with nuclear explosions or something?
I'm still taking it as a very, I don't know, maybe a muted climate change metaphor.
Okay.
We know what's going on. It's happening. We're trying to investigate alternatives. Some of those alternatives may not be so great for us, but there's going to be the absolute tipping point where we don't have a choice anymore. And I think that tipping point is the burn. The dilithium went boom, and with no choices.
Well, we had a discussion where we tried to relate the burn to present day, and we came up with it because it's something that's consumable, because dilithium was consumable, and it was the point for propulsion, and we related it to oil, to gasoline. But then Dag brought up another good point: if the CO2 levels, got to a point where engines couldn't ignite that fuel and combust.
Yeah, we said that in our last one.
I think it definitely has something to do with like postmodernism, but maybe we should keep going.
One small bit though, just to point out before we go on, the original plot line in TNG where they talked about like running subspace thin essentially, and they had to like go
force of nature.
Whatever. Yeah, force of nature. That was a direct reference to climate change and to the ozone layer disaster, both of those, right?
Beat your face in with this climate change.
It was real forceful there. I think that this might be something different. I think this is just like plastic or like hydrocarbon usage, not necessarily just for fuel.
It could very well not be a specific metaphor. It could be just a reference to finding your balance, your homeostasis point in an ecology.
That's right.
And dilithium in the Federation was that balance. They grew too big, they went out of balance, and suddenly, boom. But I know we're going to figure out that the boom was actually some form of malicious cause, and we're all been duped for the last 100 years. But we'll figure that out.
That's what my money's on.
In the next 3 episodes.
Well, because Michael Burnham wasn't around to save the day. So
if only we'd have landed 100 years earlier.
Yep. And you damn well know that is true. That's exactly what would happen. So
this is one of the 2 longest sequences in the show. Scene 14. The Takalan Ket begins with a chime. Burnham addresses everybody nicely, thinks she owns the place, then gets interrupted with a motion for dismissal. Takir's like, we already reviewed your shit. I motion we dismiss. Takir gave me so many Tuvok vibes.
Yes.
I was in love.
Yeah, Takir was totally Tuvok.
It was great. Michael points out that she's proven that the Navarre wasn't the source of the burn. The Romulan quorum member, I can't remember his name, is like, how long have you known? This would have saved lives. Michael reminds everyone that she only got these evidence a couple of days ago.
And we came right here.
Right. And the Vulcans say her evidence is insignificant compared to their own data. Michael's like, why aren't you going to share it then? Shira says...
Takir is right, though. It's such a small sample size. 3 points of
3
data,
points,
right?
Yeah. It's a 2-dimensional cross-section of a 3-dimensional area. And without knowing which way the source is, we can't. Yeah.
But it already points towards the possibility of exonerating Vulcan, and that's the whole thing. Is if it could, and I mentioned this earlier in our recording, if they have the chance to possibly exonerate Vulcan, why aren't they going for it as opposed to like what is it that they
bury things?
Right.
Vulcans bury things. They bury their emotions. They bury their concerns. They buried Surak for generations, right?
Yes.
Here they think they've gotten past the SB-19 destroying the transportation in the galaxy. They think they're finally past it. And now somebody wants to talk about it again. No. We don't talk about that anymore.
Well, but if you're accused of a crime, let's say you're accused of a crime, you have, and everyone's blaming you for a thing, and you're sitting on this flash drive of info that would completely exonerate you, but would make it worse. Could be.
But it may not even do that yet, right? Like they don't know. They don't think it does. They think that they've had 100 years of science backing up that it was us. They don't think that this is enough, right? So they're going to be like, let's just not talk about this. It's bad enough that you brought it up here. This is terrible. Just don't talk about this. This is the past. Let it be the past, right? And we can't trust the Federation because you forced us to do it anyways.
But no, they have info. They are sitting on info that
they're not sitting on the right info.
Well, but I thought SB19. I thought they know that SB19 says that they didn't do it, but they're not.
We
giving
don't have all the cards. We need to remember that Discovery storytelling is totally nonlinear.
Right.
This data could actually be falsified. It could be twisted. You could have colluders. That guy Takir could have been in collusion with the whole thing that happened 120 years ago. So we don't have all the cards, and I'm saying like we need to trust the writers, but so far they're not really helping us out.
They were like grave political ramifications. So there's info that they have that says, okay, this info getting out is not worth the chance of exonerating us as the cause. So what could be so bad that they would continue taking the blame for whatever this information
The Federation.
I think it could literally just be as bad as talking about this brings up the schisms, right? Remember, the Romulans wanted to say, the Vulcans wanted to leave, right?
For sure.
Talking about it brings that back up, and they're already afraid, right? He talks about how there's unrest in the Romulan areas and how they have to put all this money into the Romulo-Vulcan areas, right? So shut up. Let's fix our problems first. Maybe in 600 years, my grandkids can have this conversation, right?
Yeah, because the Romulan Quorum guy, was pretty much like, okay, well, if you're not going to give it to her, I will. So there's division there, and then one person kind of playing the middle, like, okay,
it's
we
just
need to
the
think
Federation
about this.
coming in again and putting their fingers in our pie and fucking things up. and we know that the president of Navarre straight up said this was the straw that broke the camel's back. This was not. There was a long list of things that Federation had done, and this was what caused it. So I mean, there's bad blood for real. So this is obviously going to stir shit up, but Michael will get through it as she does.
Well, she'll try. Anyway, so there's a lot of infighting. Takir is serious about how badly run the other areas of Navarre are, and that releasing the SB19 data can only inflame the situations. There is no consensus, however, in the quorum on Takir's dismissal, so Mama Burnham moves for an adjournment to get some time. We flip over to engineering, where Tilly approaches Stamets and tells him about Saru's request that she become acting XO. Stamets' double take is breakneck worthy. He is astonished and not confident. He says the notion of taking orders from her is deeply, deeply weird and somewhat disturbing.
He didn't get to finish his thought. He definitely didn't get to finish. He did not say.
He did not. They said they get interrupted by Owosakun, who's asking about calculations for the jump back. He tells her to tell Detmer to hold her horses, and Tilly leaves. We go back to a sidebar with Gabrielle and Michael. They're talking about the ritual. Michael tries to make an argument that her honesty is legit, which her mom is like, no, it ain't. And because Gabby has to live up to her oath to the Kawat Malat, she tells Michael that she really can't be trusted because she's not telling them something. And that's what it boils down to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what your motives are, as long as we can trust that that's what your motives are.
Right.
Which is where I start to think maybe this whole thing is theatrical. I'm not sure. Burnham.
It's definitely theatrical, right? The whole scene where the mother starts like, hey, you need against your captain and she got killed. Hey, you did this. Hey, you did that. Hey, you did this. All these things were things that, the Vulcan members of the quorum knew, but weren't arguing yet. So instead, the mother just dragged things out and in a way that Michael would need to respond to.
She laid Michael under the bus. I mean, she was so far under, like she could check the oil, take the pan out of it. And that was rough. Oh yeah. And Michael's looking at her like, what the fuck are you doing?
Michael caught on though. Like she said, like, I figured what you were doing, but man, that was still rough.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to beat the truth out of people, And I think that had she not done that, either someone in the room or one of the quorum members was sitting, waiting to zing her with what she said. And had she not said it, then she would have just deep sixed her case. So I don't know. Or it was just let's just be cautious and get all this out so that you're not blindsided. It's kind of like if you're on trial, it's worse if the prosecutor drags it out of you. You look more guilty than if you
discovery. That's funny. So in trial, there's a process called discovery, right?
Yes.
Where you have to lay out all of your evidence and you have to show the other side all the evidence that you have, right?
Yes.
So that they can be prepared for it. Ironically, it's named Discovery, just like the show. So that's probably part of the pun that they're making here for it. But that's essentially what the co-op Moat lady did here. Gabrielle did. She just laid out all the evidence that the other side has against her and gave her a chance to respond.
It's even worse when the prosecutor's your mother that you haven't seen your whole life.
I think I said it wrong. Her mother is her defense lawyer, but your lawyer is going to tell you, tell me everything. Tell me the truth, because I can't defend you if you're not being honest with me. And that's right. You don't want the guy representing you, or the person representing you, to get dinged or to get smoked in court because you hold something back or don't reveal something that's key. So that's what she's doing, is making sure, like, listen, you are going to be honest if I have to beat it out of you or not.
Isn't evidence that isn't presented during discovery inadmissible in court?
They have to make a special motion to get it to be admissible, but yeah, it's generally inadmissible, but you can, if it's new evidence, something that was newly found, you can bring it.
Oh, that's what I mean, is like if you knew something had happened or you had evidence prior to discovery and you didn't bring that, then... Oh,
it's actually unethical. So if you find exculpatory evidence, so let's say you're the prosecutor, right? You're prosecuting somebody for doing something bad, and in your process, you find evidence that they did something that they didn't do it. And if you don't include that in discovery, if you don't provide that to the defense, there are like serious issues for doing so. Not to say it doesn't happen, but it's still an ethical violation not to provide that to the defense.
Right. And that's the whole point of this whole quorum, is like, you're not giving us everything and we're not going to partner with you.
Right.
If you don't do it.
Let's not try to compare this quorum to a 1,000-year-old American judicial system.
Well, the writers live in the context of that system.
That's true.
And the fact that it's actually called discovery, I don't think is an accident. Right, like the process is called discovery. I don't think it's cool. Accidental.
I mean, it's cool. I'm not one that's like, I liked the Lower Decks episode with the trial because it was in the way of like the Canterbury like tales where you like look in the past. But this was mostly like just talky. And so for me, it's like,
I love alien trial episodes. I've loved every single one I've ever gotten in Trek. I like the ones in other shows. The one in Farscape was amazing with a planet of lawyers. Every show that does alien trial episodes, I am here for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's always some process that you're not aware of that's going to bite you in the ass. So
yeah, let's jump into the longest scene of the show. Burnham goes back into they go back into the Tikal and Tet. Burnham just reasserts, I presented the right evidence, but I'm also kind of unsure that it's going to answer the question. Mm-hmm. Takir asks why she doesn't believe them when they say, we've already analyzed it and we are the cause. Shira asks her who she's asking for, the Federation or herself. She says for the Federation. Shira reminds the audience that the Federation was the cause of their guilt. How can they be sure that the Federation won't use the data unwisely? Gabrielle does a character assassination of Burnham, bringing up her insurrectionist activities and her sudden lack of confidence about where she belongs. Gabby uses it to ask why anyone should trust you if you don't know where you belong in the first place. She even tells Michael that you have a desire to or she has a desire to insinuate herself into certain matters of import, which could just be the most one-line summary of the entire series.
That's
from
it.
the Battle of the Binary Stars to today.
Well, the Battle of the Binary Stars, she tried to do things the Vulcan way. She should have used that as her defense.
Yeah, but she wouldn't have died if I hadn't tried the Vulcan way. I've been carrying my guilt for 1,000 years. Gabrielle.
What do you think's worse, Vulcan guilt or Catholic guilt? Well, we don't have time to
I
go
only
there.
have experience with one, Big Jess.
You haven't met a Catholic Vulcan.
Ooh.
So
Twice the guilt and all the persecution.
They have it out in front of everybody. Michael brings up her purpose and place and successes regarding control. She makes the point that we can be imperfect and still live up to the Federation's highest ideals.
That's true.
And Gabrielle says, well, I mean, if that's what you believe, why are you struggling with where you belong? Michael admits that she is afraid that if she stays, she'll hurt people.
It was the worst kind of like your mom wanting to have it out with you about something she disagrees with you, and it's a trial at the same time. So you're like having to deal with your personal bullshit, your personal BS, and with the political scientific stuff of the T'Kal Ket, right? Like that was like very, very weird.
Guys,
like,
what if? Go ahead.
I'm just like her mom says, if that's what you believe, why are you struggling with belonging? But that completely ignores the previous point that Michael makes, that you can be imperfect and still live up to the Federation's ideals. It's like she answered her own question.
She wanted Michael to realize it, though. That's the thing.
Is it me, or was this whole confrontation very fitting for when this episode was released, which was Thanksgiving? And all the family fights and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, for sure.
This is the dinner table discussion.
Yep.
Why aren't you getting married yet?
Where are my grandkids?
Oh God. Let's not go there. We don't have that time.
I know I've made a bunch of Star Trek V references to Cybok, but what if Cybok's ethos and cult members were like really aligned with Kawat Malat?
Mm-hmm.
What if that's why Cybok came back? What if he went and trained with the Kawat Malat and was like, the Vulcan way is about hiding everything, and we can have a better way?
Honestly, I feel like Cybok would have done a great job, like with reunification itself. I think he would have been great for it.
Right. And what if that was his like pursuant task, and he kind of failed at it? But Spock realized in the end that maybe Cybok had a point.
I like it.
Moving on. The quorum is fractured at this point. The Vulcans don't want to share anything. The Romulans are like, if you're not going to do it, we will. The other Romulan, the Shira, who's the head of the Romulo-Vulcan faction, is sort of playing the middle, and Niraj like just calls her out, like, you look at you who are saying everything and nothing and trying to, there's a really good quote there. I didn't write it down.
You can't always play the middle.
Right.
Because you're right. Saying everything and saying nothing.
Michael, the audience stands up and there's a lot of arguing and infighting, and Michael suddenly realizes that her request alone could be damaging Navarre's healing.
Yeah, that's what we said at the beginning.
The last thing she wants to do is undo Spock's legacy. So she stands up and she's like, I'm actually realizing what's happening here. I'm not going to be a part of it. I rescind my request. Please be at peace. Maybe we can figure this out later. I'm going to continue looking for the source of the burn, and I'm going to share all of my information with you to prove that it wasn't you. You don't have to trust me, but I'm going to trust you. And then she drops her mic and leaves, and everybody stands up.
Loved it.
Yep.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I did like that part. I was like, wow, she's backing up. She probably should, because she's pushing this cracked society. to the point of breaking.
Right.
Maybe Michael Burnham is growing up a little,
Yes.
Yeah.
realizing that her actions have consequences.
You have to know. You have to know when to stop pushing. It's like if you swear that your spouse ate your Chipotle leftovers and they're not admitting to it, and it's getting heated, you just got to move on with life.
We told you.
Chipotle's
Just
not
go get more Chipotle.
Right. Just go get freaking more Chipotle. You know.
There's actually a really good exchange there between Michael and President Tarina. President is like, you represent the Federation, but Spock left it. And Michael just cuts through that. It's like, it doesn't mean he didn't love the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
It just means, I'm going to extrapolate here. It just means that he couldn't do what he needed to do, what he felt he was obligated to do inside Federation regulations and stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
This is what we wanted to talk about. I think about how it's never really been confirmed in canon that he left. Now, remember the episode when they went to, they were looking to see if he defected it to the Romulans initially, right? But when they found him there, he made it very clear he hadn't. So I guess they kind of stuck with the whole notion that he left, but he hadn't defected.
Right.
But that's the whole thing about Spock, is everyone's like, what's Spock doing? Spock just does his own shit, and everyone just assumes he's doing things like murdering people as a young Spock in the previous time.
Well, once they found out what he was doing, it was like, okay, we'll just leave you alone. Just wanted to see what you're up to. What were you doing?
He was a Federation ambassador who took his title to Romulus and tried to do something he wasn't authorized to do. Sounds a lot like Michael, doesn't it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
She leaves. She goes to her quarters. Gabby comes to her, tells her, they talk about trust. They talk about how that when the president of Navarre finally saw Michael reveal her truth to everybody, that she decided that Michael and maybe the Federation could be trusted with the SB-19 data. So she hands her a data card. Gabrielle talks about and asks, she wonders, Trina says she wondered how much of Spock was influenced by Michael. And that sort of takes us back to that flashback that happened earlier where Michael says, people will reach for you, let them. And it just, it's an interesting addition to his own conviction there. Michael is worried that Gabby's going to leave. Gabby says, well, I have to leave. You're not a lost cause anymore. And
totally arbitrary.
He also gets that mom moment where she's like, I finally get to tell you, you always know where I'll be. Tilly goes to engineering. The main bridge crew is there telling her to say yes to Saru's request and explain why. Michael shows up at the moment, is like, and you can assign somebody to help me unlock all this SB-19 data.
Did I miss the say yes moment?
Yeah.
Did I miss that cool say yes moment?
Dang. They have a little heart to heart where Michael sort of reinforces her and says, lead me. I will follow. I have a little note here. I'm like, I know this is like a really shallow point, but can we start a Michael cry counter per episode? But I did read a Michael cry counter.
Oh, gotcha.
But I also think that that's petty of me. I did read an article talking.
I got choked up 3 times that episode. There were 3 scenes where I was like, oh.
There were some. You're right.
So.
There are really some really good heartfelt moments. Yeah. They're doing a really good job of punching the coronary there. But I also read an article about how Discovery might be the most emotionally intelligent show because of all this demonstration of feeling. Every other series of Star Trek is, hey, we're gonna butt heads through this or be diplomatic through this. And I think there is definitely relevance today to being emotional through moments.
I think that this episode shows that emotional intelligence is absolutely vital to ensuring success. And Michael knew when to stop because she could see what was happening to the quorum. So this is absolutely an emotionally intelligent show.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, Michael demonstrates what Tarina said about giving up platitudes and maxims. The Federation could benefit from this information, but the few, their needs are more important right now.
I'll allow it.
She gives those needs. She gives up her conviction to help the Federation in favor of Navarre. Saru has a scene where he makes more diplomatic overtures to the president of Navarre. She says she'd like that. They LLAP and she bounces home. I love the aurora around Navarre. It's beautiful. We flash back to Michael and Book. They're looking at the Borealis, and Michael confirms that, yeah, she actually does belong on Discovery. Book reinforces what he called her at the beginning of the series, a true believer. And then Book tells Michael that she feels like home. And I think that's really cool. We zoom out as Discovery departs Navarre.
Now, Watney, wasn't that last line romantic? Come on.
What was it? Oh, she feels like home. Sure.
No, he said she feels like home.
Deadpan. Yep. Hey, you know what? Lade tells me I feel like
home,
and that's touching. I felt represented there.
You guys, cold as ice.
It would mean more if it meant more. That's all I gotta say.
Well, maybe we'll get more out of it.
Yeah, so we'll see where it goes. But as of now, shoehorned relationship it is to me. I love the word shoehorned. It's a word of the day.
Would you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find us if they have gripes about what we talked about this episode?
Well, if you have gripes, go to Twitter because Dag runs that.
Under the bus.
If you want to talk to us online, twitter.com/BeyondTrekPod. So just at Beyond Trek Podcast. You can find us there. Dag is super active on our Twitter. We also have an Instagram at Beyond Trek Podcast and a Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond Trek Productions. And if you would like to support us online, you can find us at patreon.com/Beyond Trek. We would love your support there. We have some cool tiers. And I want to give a special shout out to Stephanie Baker and Jim Cook, Patreon and Anchor donators, as well as John from Cygnus-X1.net, who provides the stills that we use for our videos.
He took Thanksgiving off.
Yeah,
right?
He did, but he still helps us out.
John, you're great. Hope you got a lot of good turkey. We love you. Yep.
Beautiful. Yep.
That's great. Stephanie, love you. Thank you. And Jim as well. That's awesome. So how about in a minute, closing thoughts real quick?
I just want to thank all the listeners and viewers for joining us as we leapt through the mycelial network of this episode in record time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Saturday morning and we all have some family stuff to do, so we had to really push it, but we hope that we've given you some really good thoughts and interesting tidbits about this episode.
Would you say we had to shoehorn it?
Yeah. Listeners, we're so thankful for you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. I hope everyone stays healthy and safe.
Renzo?
Thanksgiving to all. This is my favorite Discovery episode of the show so far. This has definitely been great. I really quite enjoyed it.
Trial episodes. Trial episodes
are the secret to my heart.
Yeah. It was a cool flip because instead of bringing the Vulcans and Romulans together, the Vulcans and Romulans are trying to figure it out, and now it's trying to bring them and the Federation back together.
So here's what I like about this episode and so far with this season is it really feels more episodic. It's episodic with serialized undertones. It kind of feels like a quest. They have to do this piece to then get to this piece, then do that part. So you really think about it, we're getting that episodic kind of semi-bottle episode stuff because they have to build these pieces to get to the ultimate goal. So it's like doing a quest. You've got to do these steps, gather the herbs, and then talk to the medicine man, and then kill the ogre, and then get the thing. So I like it. I like that style that they're doing here. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and let's all go to our family stuff. Be safe, live long and prosper, and eat all the turkey.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.